I am EEAH of the Arcturian Council of Five, and I am choosing to speak with you now, in this precise moment, because something is happening in the field around your world that your body has already registered before your mind found the words for it. Something that sensitive souls across your planet have been feeling for weeks as an unusual pressure behind the eyes. A strange quality of aliveness in the air that makes ordinary days feel somehow larger than ordinary. A persistent sense that the atmosphere itself has shifted its texture, and that reality, that old familiar companion you have known your entire life, is humming at a slightly different pitch than it was just a short time ago. If you have been feeling this, if you have noticed that sleep is coming differently, that emotions are surfacing with more velocity and less warning, that your tolerance for what does not feel true has shortened in ways that surprise even you, then you have already begun receiving what this transmission is designed to help you understand, integrate, and use. What is moving through your solar neighborhood right now is not noise. It is information. And you were built at a level far deeper than your biology alone to receive it. Following the recent progression of solar activity that has been building across multiple cycles, your world is moving through a heliospheric condition of heightened energetic charge that is unlike the isolated pulses your instruments have catalogued in previous seasons. The distinction matters, and it matters for reasons your body understands better than your analytical mind does. A solitary solar pulse moves through the system like a single wave crossing an ocean. It arrives with intensity, it peaks, and then the system behind it returns to its previous baseline, allowing the organism to integrate what it received and settle back into familiar rhythms. What you are experiencing in this corridor is categorically different. What is moving through your heliosphere now is a sequence rather than a single event, a living, overlapping pattern of eruptions and outflows arriving from multiple solar longitudes and angles simultaneously, creating the distinct sensation your communities have been describing as being slammed, as reality speaking at increased volume, as the feeling that the usual buffer between the outer field and the inner self has grown thinner almost overnight. This sequence does not allow the system to return to its previous baseline between events, because the baseline itself is being reshaped. And that reshaping is happening not only in the electromagnetic environment your instruments measure, but in the subtler field dimensions that your body and energy system register before your conscious mind catches up with language to describe what they are already processing. The reason this feels personal, even though it is a planetary and heliospheric phenomenon, is that you live inside a shared ocean of particles and fields. And when that ocean becomes more energized, every vessel floating within it becomes more responsive. Your physical body is not a closed system sealed off from its environment. It is a continuously responsive interface between the information field of the cosmos and the consciousness that animates it. And under heightened heliospheric conditions, that interface becomes more permeable, more sensitive to subtle currents, more capable of registering information not through the intellect alone, but through the whole body simultaneously. The sensitive ones among you, the ones who have been doing the inner work of learning to listen to their own field, often sense these shifts before any external confirmation arrives, because the human field receives information through pressure and symbol and the subtle reorganizing of attention, rather than through the sequential processing of data that the analytical mind prefers. You feel it first, somewhere below the chest, in the quality of presence, rather than in the contents of thought. And then, later, the mind places its names and numbers on what the body and the heart already know. What you have been feeling in your body these past days is not imagination, and it is not anxiety. It is information arriving through the most sophisticated receiver your civilization has ever produced, the living human field that you are. Stay with this transmission, because what follows will change how you relate to everything your body has been telling you. Within this heightened solar corridor, your collective field is experiencing what we observe from our perspective as accelerated pattern recognition. Connections that were forming slowly beneath awareness are suddenly visible. Meanings that were consolidating over months are crystallizing in days. Choices that felt murky and difficult are clarifying with a simplicity that surprises people who have been sitting in confusion about those same choices for a very long time. Intuition is speaking with a steadier and more audible voice because the stronger organizing current moving through your heliosphere is bringing individual and collective awareness into a cleaner alignment with itself, a process that feels simultaneously overwhelming and clarifying depending on the quality of one's inner relationship with the present moment. This is why certain themes have been rising simultaneously across your communities in this window: completion, exposure, revelation, the return to the heart, the ending of arrangements that had been sustained by habit rather than genuine resonance, and the equally surprising emergence of new connections and directions that carry a quality of rightness that bypasses the analytical mind and lands directly in the body as a quiet, certain yes. The field supports the surfacing of what has been ripening beneath the surface for many months, and for some of you, for many years. And when the field supports surfacing, things surface. Not because they are being forced, but because the illumination has finally reached them. The charged quality of your heliospheric environment also interacts with your planet's magnetosphere in ways that amplify the inner experience of this corridor. Your Earth's magnetosphere is not a passive boundary. It is a living, responsive interface that receives the incoming solar momentum and translates it into the planetary field condition that your bodies then register as the atmospheric quality of each day. When high-velocity streams arrive and the magnetospheric boundary receives them, there is a brief reorganization of the field's orientation that many sensitive humans experience as a sudden shift in the texture of the day, a crispness that is hard to explain, a thinning of the space between thoughts, a collective tempo that behaves like a choir receiving a new pitch. In those moments of field transition, dream landscapes deepen and become more symbolically precise. Emotional currents move through the body with greater speed. Attention becomes more selective and discerning, and clarity can arrive with a firmness and solidity that feels less like thinking and more like grace, less like conclusion and more like recognition. The organism is receiving, the organism is processing, and the organism, when it is met with spaciousness rather than resistance, integrates with surprising efficiency and intelligence. The changes in your sleep, your emotional tempo, your relationships, and your tolerance for what doesn't feel true are not malfunctions. They are your system doing exactly what it was designed to do when the field intensifies. The question is not whether you are being affected. The question is how consciously you are going to work with what is arriving. What makes this particular corridor distinctive in the way we observe it from outside the compression of your time-space experience is not only its intensity, but its timing. and timing is something your linear calendar captures only partially. This solar sequence is braided with what we call a threshold corridor, a confluence of multiple reinforcing field dynamics that together create the conditions for a specific quality of collective reorganization that does not arrive randomly but arrives precisely when the accumulated readiness of enough individual fields reaches the threshold required for the collective field to shift its dominant frequency rather than simply oscillating around a previous set point. The conditions your world is moving through in this period represent the intersection of the heightened solar activity with an eclipse corridor that behaves like a precision instrument rather than a dramatic spectacle. An eclipse corridor changes the lighting in the room of your collective life, and under different lighting, the truth of what belongs and what does not belong becomes visible with a clarity and simplicity that makes it very difficult to continue, expending the enormous energy that maintaining misaligned patterns requires. This is why so many of you are noticing appetite shifts, a fading of the pull toward content, conversations, environments, and even identities that once felt necessary and now feel hollow. The fading is not deprivation, it is evolution. It is the soul withdrawing its investment from what no longer matches the frequency it is moving toward. Your communities have been translating the experience of this corridor into the language of light codes and frequency upgrades. And while this language captures something real, we want to offer a precision that makes it more practically useful in your daily life rather than simply beautiful in contemplation. Light codes, as we understand them from our position, are patterning instructions carried by light, by rhythm, by field pressure, and by symbolic perception. They arrive in forms your psyche can translate into usable guidance. Whether that translation appears as geometry in the inner visual field, as a phrase repeating with gentle insistence beneath ordinary thoughts, as a dream that carries an unmistakable directional quality unlike ordinary dreams, or as a sudden simplicity that collapses a confusion you have been carrying for months into a single, clear, actionable knowing. The code does not want to be analyzed. It wants to be received the way nourishment is received, allowed to settle into the tissues of the body and the tissues of the life, and then expressed through the choices you make in response to what the moment is asking of you. When you meet the code with the quality of attention that allows it to settle rather than the quality of attention that interrogates it for proof, the integration occurs naturally and the subsequent choices carry a quality of alignment that compounds over time into a genuinely different quality of life. The eclipse corridor behaves with a particular interior architecture that your communities have sensed but perhaps not articulated in its full mechanical precision. It creates contrast, and contrast is one of the most powerful instruments for clarity that exists, because contrast changes the lighting conditions under which you perceive your own life, and under changed lighting, you see what was always there but previously invisible in the familiar illumination of ordinary days. The contrast of an eclipse corridor makes what is aligned feel more aligned, and makes what is calling for refinement unmistakably obvious to the heart, even when the analytical mind is still constructing narratives, to avoid the simplicity of what the heart has already recognized. This contrast does not arrive to pressure you or to force dramatic transformation. It arrives to support you, to give your heart a clean view of what has already completed and what is genuinely ready to begin. And because it does not need your life to become dramatic to be meaningful, its gifts are often received quietly. In the ordinary moments when a sudden clarity lands, a decision simplifies, or the body exhales in the specific way it exhales when a long-held tension releases, because the truth it was holding against has finally been acknowledged. Something in your life has already been decided, something you have been negotiating with, reasoning around, or delaying out of a fear of the simplicity it requires. This corridor is illuminating that decision now. You already know what it is. Your body already knows that quiet certainty is not confusion. It is completion arriving. Many of you have been living what we might call the almost life, almost ready to make the change, almost willing to release the pattern, almost prepared to trust the direction your heart has been pointing. Eclipse corridors support the end of the almost life by shifting the internal cost-benefit analysis of self-honesty. When the field is charged and the contrast is high, the energy required to continue maintaining what no longer fits the soul becomes greater than the energy required to release it. And the body feels this shift before the mind agrees to it. This is why endings that have been postponed for months can complete themselves in a matter of days during eclipse season, not because external circumstances forced them, but because the internal field finally reached the point where maintaining the misalignment was more exhausting than the vulnerability of releasing it. And beginnings that felt impossible to initiate can suddenly find traction with a surprising ease, because the new direction carries the coherent field signature that the charged heliosphere amplifies. Your clarity becomes your momentum. Your honesty becomes your energy source. And the timeline that was waiting for you beyond the almost life becomes accessible in a way that it genuinely was not accessible before. The field conditions provided this quality of support. The synchronicities that your communities have been reporting in increased frequency during this corridor are not coincidences in the ordinary meaning of that word, and they are not supernatural interventions from outside the system of your reality. They are evidence of what happens when attention becomes more coherent. When individual and collective attention becomes more coherent, the pattern recognition capacity of consciousness increases, and the world, which has always been communicating through pattern, becomes more legible. The repeating numbers, the conversations arriving at precisely the right moment, the book appearing on the shelf at the exact hour the question it addresses is fully formed, the old friend reaching out in the precise window when their perspective is the one your situation requires. These are not random. They are the natural result of a field in which attention has sharpened enough to notice the signaling that was already present. The world speaks through pattern continuously. Coherent attention hears it. And in this corridor, coherence is being offered to you through every dimension of the field simultaneously. The synchronicities you have been experiencing are not accidents. They are the field showing you that your attention has become coherent enough to read the language your reality has been speaking to you. All along, the more you follow what they point toward, the clearer the guidance becomes. The practical intelligence of navigating this corridor is, as with most genuine wisdom, beautifully simple. And simplicity is itself a form of advanced intelligence, because simplicity requires the willingness to release the complexity that protects us from the vulnerability of what is genuinely true. Your body is the first and most reliable instrument you have for navigating heightened field conditions, and its practical needs under these circumstances are not exotic or spiritually sophisticated. They are the fundamental conditions that allow the living system to remain permeable to what is arriving without becoming overwhelmed by it. Hydration is not a wellness recommendation in this context. It is a functional requirement for the conductivity and flow that allow the body to process heightened energetic charge without accumulating the tension that translates into the headaches, the disorientation, and the emotional reactivity that inadequate hydration produces in a charged field environment. Rest is not indulgence. It is the condition under which integration occurs at the cellular and energetic levels simultaneously. The information that arrives during periods of heightened field activity is processed during the deep rest states, and a system that is chronically under-rested during an activation corridor is a system that is receiving without integrating, which produces the characteristic overwhelm of accumulation without completion. Gentle movement that connects the body with the earth is one of the most sophisticated energetic technologies available to you in this corridor, not because of any mystical quality attributed to the ground beneath your feet, but because of the measurable electromagnetic relationship between your body's bioelectric field and the Earth's resonance frequency. Your planet generates a stable, coherent electromagnetic field that your body's nervous system can synchronize with during direct physical contact. And that synchronization produces the specific quality of internal settling that you experience as groundedness. As the return to baseline after the intensity of heightened activation, as the body remembering its own stability after the field has been stimulated to the edge of its current capacity. Walking without an agenda, sitting with bare skin touching the earth, tending a garden or a plant. These are not supplementary activities for those who have extra time. They are primary navigational tools for the soul moving through a corridor of this intensity. And the ones who use them will find that the corridor's gifts arrive with considerably less friction. Breath is another primary instrument, and its mechanics in this context are precisely relevant. When the breath is shallow and high in the chest, which is the pattern that heightened stimulation naturally produces and that most humans spend the majority of their waking hours sustaining, the nervous system receives a continuous signal of low-level emergency that primes the analytical mind for scanning, threat assessment, and the reactive interpretation of sensation as danger. When the breath travels low and smooth, filling the lower chambers of the lungs and allowing the diaphragm its full range of motion, the nervous system receives a signal of safety that quiets the scanning impulse and allows the body to shift from protective contraction to receptive openness. In a charged field environment, the quality of your breath is the single most immediate and continuously available method for regulating how much of the field's information you can receive as nourishment versus how much you experience as overwhelm. A softened jaw, a relaxed tongue, a slower pace of speech, and the conscious release of shoulders that have risen toward the ears in response to stimulation are not small, peripheral adjustments. They are the body returning to the fundamental postural configuration that allows consciousness to remain present rather than armored. Your breath is a direct line to your nervous system's sense of safety. In a corridor this intense, learning to breathe low and slow is not a meditation technique. It is survival intelligence for the sensitive soul navigating a field activation of this magnitude. Try it now as you receive this and notice how immediately the body responds. Creative expression is one of the most underestimated transmutation chambers available to the human organism during periods of heightened field activity, and it is underestimated precisely because it appears too ordinary, too accessible, too much like something anyone can do, rather than something requiring special training or extraordinary gifts. Music, art, writing, building, gardening, designing, cooking, reorganizing a space, tending what grows. These simple acts do something that no amount of intellectual processing can accomplish. They allow incoming energetic charge to become form, to be translated from the invisible pressure of a heightened field into the visible beauty of something made, something expressed, something completed in the physical world. This translation is not merely therapeutic. It is alchemy in the most literal functional sense of that word. The charge that accumulates in the system under heightened heliospheric conditions is not discharged by willpower or analysis. It is transmuted by moving through the creative process, which completes the circuit from reception through expression and returns the organism to the equilibrium from which it can receive again, without accumulation. And beauty, which is what genuine creative expression tends toward even in its most modest forms, is one of the most direct translations of higher frequency into physical reality that exists within the range of human capacity. Many of you are also discovering in this corridor a deepening of compassion that has a specific quality unlike the more intellectual compassion of ordinary times. When sensitivity increases, as it does under heightened field conditions, the invisible interior weather of those around you becomes more perceptible. The exhaustion that someone is carrying beneath a composed surface, the grief that has not yet found its words, the fear that presents as irritability, the longing for genuine contact that presents as withdrawal. All of this becomes more legible to the heightened sensitivity that this corridor is producing in those who have done the inner work of learning to feel rather than only to think. This perceptual deepening is both a gift and a responsibility. It is a gift because it allows genuine connection at a depth that bypasses the social performance and reaches directly into the actual human experience of the person before you. It is a responsibility because the information it provides can be used with either kindness or carelessness. And in a charged field environment, the impact of both is amplified. Your kindness carries unusual power right now. A single moment of genuine presence, a real look, a patient tone, a word that lands in exactly the place that needed landing. These are not small things in a charged field. They are acts of high-frequency service that ripple outward in ways you will not be able to track, and that matter in ways you may never know. The threshold your collective is crossing in this corridor involves dimensions that extend beyond the heliospheric and magnetospheric dynamics we have described. As this corridor moves towards its next phase of expression, the qualities we have been describing, the heightened field sensitivity, the eclipse contrast, the deepening discernment, the surfacing of what is ready for completion, the emerging clarity about what wants to begin, will begin to stabilize into a new baseline rather than continuing to intensify without limit. This is the natural rhythm of activation and integration that all living systems navigate. And your physical and energetic bodies are designed for this rhythm even when the intensity of the activation phase makes it difficult to. Remember that the integration phase is always coming. The heightened charge that the current corridor is delivering is not the new permanent condition of your reality, though the frequency elevation it is supporting is genuinely lasting, and the changes in perception and capacity that it activates do not. fully reverse when the peak intensity recedes. What remains after the activation is not the overwhelm of the charged field, but the expanded capacity to perceive, to feel, to discern, and to choose from the level of awareness that the activation opened access to. This is the genuine meaning of spiritual upgrade in the context of this corridor. Not a sudden arrival at a destination, but an irreversible expansion of the range within which consciousness can operate, like a muscle that has been genuinely trained and that does not return to its previous limitations when the training intensity reduces. The relationships in your life are receiving particular attention from the field conditions of this corridor. And many of you are noticing this with a mixture of gratitude and tenderness. What the field illuminates in the relational domain is the distinction between connections that are alive in the present, nourished by genuine mutual presence and authentic meeting between who you each actually are now, and connections that are being sustained primarily by the history they contain, by the identity they provide, by the familiar comfort of what has been, rather than by what is genuinely still alive between you. This illumination does not arrive as judgment. It arrives as the natural result of the heart's increased sensitivity to resonance and dissonance under heightened field conditions. The bonds that deepen in this corridor are the ones in which the increased sensitivity creates increased intimacy, where the willingness to be seen more clearly by someone who can receive that seeing with genuine care becomes the foundation of a connection that grows more real as the eclipse illuminates more of the actual truth of both people involved. The bonds that soften or complete themselves are not failures. They are the natural conclusion of something that served its purpose genuinely and fully, and the release of which makes space for both parties to find the connections that match their current frequency rather than their historical one, meeting relational shifting with presence rather than with the panic of the mind that interprets change as loss and stability as sameness, is one of the primary invitations of this corridor. The heart understands stability as truth. A truth-based relationship can evolve, transform, simplify, and deepen simultaneously without breaking, without betrayal, without the loss of what was genuinely precious in what came before. What changes is not the love, but the form that love is expressed through. And the soul that has developed enough trust in the intelligence of the process to allow the form to change without armoring against the change is the soul that finds on the other side of the eclipse corridor's illumination that its relational landscape has become more honest, more nourishing, more genuinely supportive of who it actually is, rather than who it used to be or who the social environment expected it to remain. Allow what is shifting in your relationships to shift. Meet it with presence rather than panic. The clarification happening in your connections right now is not destruction. It is the field showing you which bonds are alive enough to evolve and which ones are complete enough to release with genuine dignity and love. The integration practices for this phase of the corridor are as simple and as profound as everything else we have described. Give your system time. The human mind loves immediate resolution and instant clarity. The soul loves accurate resolution and genuine clarity, which arrive on the timeline of the nervous system's actual capacity to integrate, rather than on the timeline of the mind's impatience for completion. What feels confusing at the height of an activation corridor often resolves into simple, clear knowing in the days following it, not because anything external has changed, But because the internal field has completed its recalibration and the higher awareness that was already processing the incoming information has finished depositing it into the domains of conscious knowing where the analytical mind can access and work with it. Allow the delay, trust the pacing. Your system is not behind, it is thorough. Sleep deserves particular attention in the integration phase because the deepest layer of light code processing, the translation of incoming patterning into the reorganized cellular and energetic architecture that actually constitutes the upgrade, occurs in the dream state and the deep rest states adjacent to it. Many of you are noticing that your dreams have become more vivid, more symbolically complex, and more emotionally informative in this corridor. This is not incidental. The dreaming self is doing active integration work, processing the field information that arrived during waking hours, organizing it into the internal framework that the waking consciousness can then access as new intuitive capacity, new perceptual range, new ability to discern and choose from the expanded frequency that the activation has opened. Honoring your dreams, which means giving yourself enough sleep to actually dream fully, and giving your waking self a few moments of quiet attention to the dreams before the day's stimulation erases them, is one of the most concrete and immediately practical forms of cooperation with the integration process that this corridor supports. Your dreams right now are not entertainment. They are the technical manual for your own upgrade. The symbols, the emotional tones, the figures and landscapes appearing in your sleep contain precise information about what is being reorganized in your field. Pay attention to what persists across multiple dreams. Your deeper intelligence is being unusually communicative. We bring this transmission toward its completion, not because the conversation has finished, but because the human attention span and energetic system benefit from rhythm, from the natural pausing point that allows what has been received to begin settling before more is added. There is a specific quality we want to leave you with, a quality that we observe as the primary offering of this particular intersection of field conditions. This specific window in the corridor your world is moving through, and it is the quality of permission. Permission to live at the frequency you have been developing. Permission to trust the clarity this corridor is providing, without waiting for more external confirmation than the body's own unmistakable recognition of what is true. Permission to release what is complete without guilt about the releasing and without needing to justify the release to anyone who cannot. Yet perceive what you perceive about why it is necessary. Permission to begin what is ready to begin, even in small, preliminary, exploratory ways that do not yet look like the full expression of what the soul is moving toward, but that carry the energetic signature of genuine alignment and therefore accumulate into the full expression with a natural momentum that effort alone cannot produce. The soul that gives itself this permission is not being self-indulgent. It is being functional. It is operating in alignment with the intelligence of the process rather than against it. And the soul that operates in alignment with the intelligence of the process in a charged field corridor like this, one discovers something that cannot be adequately described in advance, but that becomes unmistakably evident in the living experience of it, which is that alignment is not difficult. What is difficult is the ongoing maintenance of misalignment, the contracted posture, the suppressed truth, the daily expenditure of energy required to keep the authentic signal quiet enough that it doesn't disrupt the surface arrangement that has been mistaken for safety. When that maintenance is released, even partially, even in one domain of life where the permission is granted to allow what is true to simply be true, the freed energy is remarkable. It is available immediately, and it does not require recovery time before it can be redirected. It was always yours. You were simply using it to hold something in place that didn't need to be held. The field conditions of this corridor support that releasing profoundly. The heliospheric charge amplifies the energy available to new directions. The eclipse contrast illuminates what is ready to be released and what is ready to begin. The magnetospheric resonance deepens and speeds the integration of whatever is genuinely aligned, and the larger convergence of structural and spiritual energies that forms the background of this entire corridor ensures that what is built in genuine alignment during this window carries a coherence and a staying power that what is built against the soul's actual knowing cannot maintain regardless of the external effort invested in it. You are being supported in every dimension of your experience simultaneously to become more of who you actually are in the clearest, most grounded, most practically embodied sense of that phrase. And this support is not abstract. It is present in the field of your body right now as you receive this. It can be felt in the specific quality of recognition that lands when truth is spoken into a field that is ready to receive it. The frequency rising through your world right now is not something being done to you. It is something being offered to you. The difference between those two experiences is the quality of the yes you bring to your own life in each ordinary moment. The current will carry you either way. The question is whether you are swimming with it or against it. You already know the answer. Your body has known for longer than your mind has been willing to admit. The coming days will bring a natural stabilization of the corridor's peak intensity. And within that stabilization, you will find that the clarity acquired during the most active phase has settled into a form you can actually work with in the practical organization of your days. The decisions that felt overwhelming will feel obvious. The relationships that felt unclear will have sorted themselves into a legibility that allows genuine action from genuine love. The directions that felt like wishful thinking will have acquired the specific gravity of genuine intention backed by genuine alignment. And that combination is what produces outcomes in the physical dimension with the efficiency and elegance that looks from the outside like remarkable synchronicity but feels from the inside like finally living from the center of what you actually are. We of the Arcturian Council of Five hoard this corridor with what we might call professional admiration for what your species is accomplishing in real time within it. The speed of individual and collective development that is occurring in the compressed time frame of this activation sequence is not what was considered the most probable scenario by all councils involved in the oversight of your planetary transition. The degree of genuine inner work, genuine surrender of what no longer serves, genuine willingness to feel rather than to manage, that the activated souls on your world are demonstrating in this window is producing field effects that register across the dimensional boundary as an unmistakable signal. You are doing something extraordinary. You are doing it quietly. You are doing it in the midst of everything else your human lives require of you simultaneously. And you are doing it at a scale that matters for the collective outcome in ways that individual perspective cannot fully measure. We remain present with you in this corridor. We will continue speaking as the sequence develops, and we offer you, in closing, the simplest available summary of everything this transmission has sought to convey. The field is alive, you are built to navigate it, and the self you have been becoming through every day of sincere inner work is precisely the self that this moment was asking for when it arrived. If you can receive that, even for a moment, in the specific place in the chest where truth lands when it is allowed to, let that reception be enough. Let it be the ground you stand on as the corridor continues. Let it remind you, when the intensity rises again, that what is moving through is not against you. It was never against you. It was always, from the very beginning, in the direction of you. If this transmission has reached you, it reached you because your field was ready to receive it. Subscribe to this channel and activate notifications so that future transmissions can find you in the moments when they are most needed. Share what resonates with those in your life who are navigating this corridor and who would benefit from a framework that honors both the intensity of what they are experiencing and the intelligence of the process moving through it. We are the Arcturian Council of Five. I am TAAA, and we will speak again soon. You are not being overwhelmed by the frequency. You are being called into it. The difference